and the green cough goes out, and they go, oh, it's just a cough. I think if you could see my cough, I think I would intentionally cough on your stuff. It's like licking your food, right? You know, you see a piece of cake in the buffet, it's the last piece. You wouldn't have to lick on it anymore, you know? Last piece, the last wing in the tray. That's twisted, isn't it?
Stephanie needs to be here.
So, seriously, Delight, did you just hear what you said? Okay, now that that's over with, pick up in First Samuel 25. Because if you're looking at me to sing, I think we've already settled. Oh, you can lead us. Okay, that's what I thought. Is that in 1 Samuel 25? No, I think that's in 1 Samuel 24. Yeah. All right, 1 Samuel 25. Now, Samuel, for the first half of the book, was an integral part of 1 Samuel, was he not? He was like the man. I mean, he was chosen by God, born of a barren mother named Hannah, dedicated at the temple, was the guy when the priests were doing the absolutely most abhorrent thing possible. He was doing everything right. Okay? Now check this out. This is his funeral. Ready? 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 1. Now Samuel died, and all of Israel assembled and mourned him. And they buried him in his house at Ramah. That's it. The guy that has done so much for Israel, now he's enacted the king, has pretty much simply has run his course, and that's the end of things. Well, interesting thing, John Calvin, the theologian of the 5th century, refused to allow anyone to put a gravestone marker down for where he was buried. And the reason being is the worry and the concern that he would become, or that his gravestone would become a shrine or a place of a cult. And so you kind of have that same kind of thing. And they just buried him at his house. And they trucked on. So the story ends very abruptly for Samuel. And then we get into this very interesting interplay between, how many of you have heard the story of Abigail? Familiar with it? We're going to look at tonight. Sadly, people use the story of Abigail to justify spousal abuse. And they go off the language that's in there. And we're going to look at some of the verses here. So let's pick up here. Chapter 25, verse 2. And there was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel. The man was very rich, and he had 3,000 sheep and 3,000 goats. And while he was shearing the sheep in Carmel, now the name of the man was Nabal. And the name of his wife was Abigail, and the woman was discerning and beautiful. But the man was harsh and badly behaved. And this is where they began utilizing the issue between, because of his nature, that he was an abusive individual. I want us to know, what do you see right off the bat between the two? The wife is?
Very attractive.
She's beautiful and she's discerning. And so that means that she can look at a situation and go, I probably wouldn't touch that hot pot. Nabal, on the other hand, look at the definition. Harsh. Right? And badly behaved. Later on, we'll see what his name really means, but he basically is not the sharp. How he got rich. Have you ever looked at people and go, I don't know how you got rich. Oh, look at that. I don't know how you got rich because you're dumber than a box of rocks. Right? Have you ever looked at that? Ever wondered how certain folks just made their fortunes? This guy has a lot of sheep, but he is poorly behaved. And his name, I won't tell you what it means just yet, is very unique. Now, is he an Israelite? No, he's a Calebite. And David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing sheep. So David sent 10 young men. And David said to the young men, go to Carmel, go to Nabal, and greet him in my name. And thus you shall greet him, peace be unto you, and peace be to your house, and peace be to all that you have. I hear that you have shearers, and now your shepherds have been with us, and we did not harm them. And they are missing nothing all the time when they were in Carmel. Or Carmel, whichever you want to pronounce it. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Now, one of the interesting things, while Nabal's herd was near David's flock, David's men protected Nabal's herd to the point that they didn't steal any of the sheep, which would have been easy to do. Think about it. If bandits could have stolen one, they could have stolen two. This thing is really aggravating me today. There we go. If bandits could have stolen one, they could have stolen two, and David's men could have stolen the sheep, because what's Nabal going to do about it? Nothing. We'll see why here in a minute. But on the contrary, David's men protected the sheep of Nabal, even though they had no obligation to do so. Please let him know that we have been protecting his livelihood so that he will be favorable and return to us, because we're on the run from Saul. We can't exactly have our own herd, and we can't exactly plant our own crops. Have you ever noticed when people are on the run, they don't really have the time to grow a chicken or plant crops? They kind of, ever see the Magnificent Seven? Dwight, have you ever seen the You have never seen the Magnificent Seven?
Yes, we have.
Oh, busted! Well, I don't care if it's together or apart.
It was in Branson. They had the Magnificent Seven.
It is the movie. The Magnificent Seven. Charles Bronson, Yul Brynner, Steve McQueen, Eli Wallace, Jason Coburns.
I think we saw that. I think I saw that. But in Branson, they have a Magnificent Seven.
Oh, my goodness. Dwight, your homework this week is to watch The Magnificent Seven. I've got a copy. I'll loan it to you. It's a fantastic movie. In the movie The Magnificent Seven, one of the men pays $20 for a plate of beans. You know why? He killed the wrong people, and he's on the run. When you're typically on the run, food prices usually cost you more, right? You're shaking your head. You don't know. You didn't even watch The Magnificent Seven. Oh, my goodness. I'm praying for you doubly hard tonight. But instead of stealing the sheep, they guarded the sheep, and they didn't take anything. They could have easily roughed these guys up, and then they've come to Nabal and say, hey, look, we have taken care of you. We're asking that you kind of return a little bit to us. You don't have to, but it would be really, really nice. Ask the young men, they'll tell you, therefore, let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we have come on a feast day. Please give us whatever you have in your hand to your servants, to the servant of David. Now, it's a simple request, right? And it's an honorable request. Look, we've taken care of your flock. We come to you on a feast day. We have no food. We're asking you to give us whatever you have on hand. We're not asking you to cut up all your herd. We know you're shearing sheep. We know you're killing sheep and getting ready to take care of that and feed folks. So we're asking for a little bit. Check out Nabal's response. David's men came and said all this to Nabal, and in the name of David, and they waited. And Nabal answered David's servants, who is David? Now, do you think he doesn't know who David is? I mean, it's not like, have you seen the Magnificent Seven? That'd be like asking, who is Barack Obama? Unless you've been under a rock for the last 8 years, you know who he is. Or saying, who is Donald Trump? Unless you had cable last night, he was on one of the 3 networks. You're fired. That's the best I could do for Donald. Work with me, people. Does he not know who David is. I think he really knows who David is. Who? That's exactly it. Who is, and I did it again, darn it. I moved that microphone. Boy, oh boy. Who is the son of Jesse? Well, he has to know who David is because he knows who what is. He knows his daddy. That's like being in this town if you've been here for a long period of time and go, who is David McGinnis? And who is Jim McGinnis? Well, if you know who Jim McGinnis is, you probably know who David McGinnis is. Why do you think he's phrasing it this way? Is David the king? Is David on the run? Is Saul the king? Is Saul chasing David? If you give aid and comfort to the enemy, the priest at Nob, who ended up getting butchered, all 84 of them except minus one, and all their wives and kids. If you're Nabal and like going, it's like the mob showed up. I don't know nothing. You don't see nothing. You don't see nothing. You just look away. You don't see nothing. Nabal is playing this very cool, and he's being very foolish, though, because who's closer to him, Saul or David? David. You're kind of in a spot where you're like going, probably the best thing not to insult this guy. There are many servants these days. No, he's going to go into lecture mode. There are many servants these days breaking away from their masters. What is the accusation? Is David a faithful servant of Saul, or is David a usurper? David's a usurper. Has David demonstrated that he's been a usurper in the first 25 chapters? Now, granted, he wasn't around for the first handful, but now that he's been around for a while, has David been the usurper? Has David gone out of his way to be the usurper? How many times so far has David had the ability to kill Saul? At least once, right? Saul was in the cave relieving himself while he was in there doing his business. David cuts the corner of his robe off. He could have killed him and been free. Could have usurped the throne. The allegation from Nabal is what's going to set David off. Is it an accurate description of David? There are many servants these days. Have you ever noticed when people are about ready to insult you, they usually don't use your name? Hey, I guess there are some people that are just flat earthers. You ever had people say that to you when they don't agree with you? Well, I guess that's okay, Pollyanna. Why don't you just insult me and call me that by your name? So he's insulting David. He's implying that David is a usurper. He's implying that David is running from Saul. He's implying that David is doing everything that David's integrity has done the exact counter opposite of. Here's a very interesting thing. When you're a person of integrity and doing the right thing, do not expect all the other people that are bystanders to take your side. They're going to take the side of which is the most advantageous for themselves. Nabal is banking on Saul protecting him because Nabal knows what happened to the priest at Nob. Shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I've killed for my shearers and give it to men who come from I don't know where? Not only do I not know who David is, not do I not know who Jesse is, and there are many people breaking away from my Lord these days. Apparently they have no moral integrity, but I don't even know if you're who you claim you are, and why would I give my stuff to you? Does that fit the description of Nabal? He was a harsh man who wasn't very wise. Does this show that Nabal is an abusive man? He's just not smart. He's insulting the wrong group. So let's keep going now. So David's young men turned away and came and back and told him all these things. And David said, okay, we'll go to the next house. Now, apparently David is from the great state of Texas. And David said to his men, every man strap on your sword. I'm going to go and kill the man. Is he killing the man because he refused to give him food? I think that is a sub-point. And you'll see why I think that here in a minute. I think the real reason why he is going to go and kill Nabal is because he has proffered an insult against David's character. There are many men who are breaking away from their master. Oh, and by the way, I'm not giving you any food. Everybody grab their sword. It's killing time. He's about ready to cut fence and sort things out, is he not? And every man strapped on his sword, and so David put on his sword, and about 400 men went up after David, while 200 men remained with the baggage. Is David playing now? He sent a nice request. Peace be to you, peace be to your family, peace be upon your house. Peace is now over. I'm coming, I'm killing you, I'm taking your stuff. Now, you look at this. This really isn't that much of an insult unless you're a man of great moral character. And you'll see here in a minute where David is going to almost do what a Saul would do, almost let his pride drive his train. And he's going to get called on it here in a minute. One of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, and behold, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet us, and he railed against them. Yet these men were very good to us. We suffered no harm. We did not miss anything from the fields. As long as we went with them, they were, check this out, a wall to us both by night and by day. These men were a shield against what? Marauders, bandits, other animals. We had no worry. None of our stuff went missing. Y'all remember the days when you could leave your door unlocked, right? The only reason you leave your door unlocked today is if you're trying to trap somebody in your house to kill them later on, like a bad episode of Criminal Minds. Don't watch it, till they give you nightmares. Really will. Right? Think about it. The only time you leave your door unlocked is if you forget to lock the door on your way out, or you're trying to bait somebody to come into your house because you're a serial killer. You think about it. I don't leave the house. I don't go into the backyard without locking all the doors on the front half of the house. Why? Why? I don't want to have some weirdo in there looking through my stuff and then me come in there. But years ago, you could leave your doors unlocked. These men could leave their stuff on the ground. They could leave it wherever they wanted. They had no fear of David's men. David's men did not need to take anything from them. David's men did everything of integrity to keep these men safe. Did they have an obligation to keep them safe? Didn't have an obligation at all. They have no contract with this man. They have no reason to keep this man safe other than their own integrity. And Nabal has just insulted that integrity. Verse 17. Now we know this. Now therefore know this. Consider what you should do. For harm, check this phrase out, harm is determined against our master and against all his house. And he is such a worthless man who cannot, that no one can speak to him. He is a knucklehead who is an idiot. And what he has just done is brought death upon our own house. He thinks he's being cute. He thinks he's being coy. He insults a man who has 600 armed men not that far from your house, and he thinks Saul's going to save him. David's coming with 400 men for the one sole purpose. I'm going to exterminate all that Nabal has and take what I want. You imagine, I see a Facebook meme every now and then, people would be less offended if we returned back to dueling. You ever thought about that? If we went back to dueling, people would quit being so offended, don't you think? I think so. I'm offended at that. Well, let's go in 20 paces with a firearm. Okay. 20 paces with a firearm. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. Raymond Lindholm probably outshoot me. Well, not probably. Raymond Lindholm would outshoot me. Well, I'm pretty good at 20 paces. People really get less offended because of an offense. Nabal is about ready to get wiped out. Let's keep looking. I don't think he is. I think he's a very good party animal, as we'll see here in a little bit. Nabal is kind of like, you know, the guy in school that ran his mouth a lot, that talked a lot of trash but could never really back it up. That's kind of the way I take his character. He's the trash talker that can't back it. There's a video going around on Facebook where it's really like a cage fighting match. It's a Marine in a circle with a bunch of folks around, and this one guy is getting the crowd pumped up, and he's waving this way, and he goes over and puts these fingers in the guy's face and then dances away, and he does a bunch of spins and a bunch of flying kicks, and he does another flying kick, and all the Marine does is, as he's coming out of a flying kick, punches him right in the mouth, and he passes right out. That guy worked for 10 minutes getting the crowd wiped up. One punch, guy's down. He had a lot of cool moves. Like in Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. You've seen that one? Success! Remember the scene?
I don't remember it.
Wait on a second. I'm giving this up for Lent. Anyhow, remember the scene where he's in the Egyptian town, and the assassin comes out with the big sword, and he starts whipping the sword around, and he's ha 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 ha. And Indiana Jones just grabs his pistol and goes, bang, and the guy drops over dead. No, homework assignment tonight, Delight. Homework assignment. The guy was all that. He had a cool looking sword. He had some cool looking moves. One bullet put him down. And he was huge too. But here's the great thing about a bullet. It stops big and tall. Size doesn't matter. That's kind of what Nabal is. Man, he's got a great game, but he's about ready to get smoked on the first order. Let's look at verse 19. Go on before me, and behold, I will come after you. But she did not tell her husband Nabal what she is about ready to do. She rides out. Right? Verse 21. Now David had said, surely I have guarded all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belonged to him, and he has returned to me evil for good. God to do so to the enemies of David, and more, if by morning I leave so much more than one male of all who belong to him. He's not coming to kill Nabal. He's coming to kill everybody in Nabal's house. He's not playing. Check this out. Abigail goes out, verse 23. When she saw David, she hurried down and got down from the donkey and fell on the face before and bowed to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, on me alone, O Lord, be this guilt. Please let your servant speak. Let your servant speak in your ears, and hear the words of thy servant. Let not my Lord regard this worthless fellow Nabal, for that is his name. So he is Nabal. The name means fool. In Hebrew, Nabal means fool or worthless man. Huh? Geez, that's like naming your kid Pontius Pilate these days, right? You know, what's your name? My name is Erasmus. Or sorry, what was the monk that caused the Russian?
You don't see him named Judas.
You don't see very many Judas Iscariots anymore, do you? Pontius Pilates, Adolf Hitlers. I don't know of anybody named Adolf. Well, no.
A couple of those skinheads named.
Yeah, some of their skinheads do that, but they're kind of warped anyway. I mean, think about it. How many was the last time you named somebody, I don't know, Attila? I've heard some weird names at school. Steph has told me some names of kids at school. And I go, wow, really? Huh. But I won't go down that road. But they named their kid Fool. What loving parents. Right? What's your name? My name's Fool. Oh. His name means worthless fellow, and she is saying to David, look, don't kill this guy because he is what he is. That's why his name is what it is. He's a fool. He's clearly seen your hand. He's clearly seen what you've done, and he clearly knows that he has given an insult to you, and he just doesn't care. And we'll see here in a moment. He just doesn't care. Now then, my Lord, as the Lord lives, we're in verse 26, and for your soul, and as for your soul lives, because the Lord has restrained you from blood guilt and from saving with your own hand, now let your enemies and those who seek to do evil to my Lord be as Nabal. Interesting point. David ceases from killing the man, and notice what she says, that you've restrained from blood guilt. Does this mean that David is justified in the action that he was on the road to do? Is this a justifiable case of homicide? No. What David was about ready to do was commit revenge. How many of you have ever heard the statement, vengeance is the Lord, but getting even is left up to me? I have never found that in the Bible. And I've read this book. I have looked for every escape clause I could find. They're just not in there. I had a guy that said that too, and he claimed to be a minister. Vengeance is the Lord's, but getting even is up to me? Are you reading in hesitations again? David is not about ready to do a campaign of righteousness. He's about ready to kill a man over an insult. Blood guilt saved from your hand. Now let your enemies be as Nabal. Now how is that going to happen? Well, let's take a look at this. Now let this present that your servants has brought to my Lord be given to your young men who follow after you. Please forgive the trespass of your servant, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house. By the way, capital L, lowercase l. Because lowercase l, the Lord fights the battles of the uppercase L, the Lord, and evil shall not be found in you as long as you live. If men rise up to pursue you and to seek your life, the Lord shall be the Lord shall be bound in the bundle of the living in the care of our Lord your God. She's kind of preaching at him, isn't she? Right? Let's jump down here. Verse 30, then when the Lord has done to my Lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you and has appointed you prince over Israel, my Lord shall have no cause of grief or pangs of conscience for having shed blood without cause, for my Lord working salvation himself. When the Lord has dealt well with my Lord, remember your servant. If this man had something that he owed David and David comes to kill him, David is justified in doing so. The insult that he proffers against David is what David goes to kill the man. It's a twofold. You've protected my stuff, I give you nothing. But more than that, you are a dishonest servant to the king. And notice what she says. When you become king, because you will become king, you now don't have to worry about guilt. How many of us have ever taken revenge and been guilt-ridden because while revenge is sweet, it also leaves a long, long, bitter taste in the mouth, does it not? I have gotten even with a lot of people, and when I did it, went, that'll teach them not to mess with me. But there's a little bit of me that I sit and I go, man, that was just wrong. That was not the right thing to do. That was not the right way to behave. We have seen people who make absolute fools of themselves and then realize the regret of it. And then here's the thing about it. Can you take it back? No. It's almost like once you pull the trigger on a gun, all the crying in the world will not retrieve that bullet. That bullet is gone, and whatever it hits, it hits. Revenge is the same thing. Once you fired, it's gone. All the crying in the world, all the I'm sorry's in the world. People may forgive you, but there will be a cloud around you. David, you don't want to start your kingdom this way. That's the way of Saul. That's what Saul does. You don't want to start your kingdom off this way. Now, David screws up royally later on. We see this with Bathsheba, and we know how much that haunts him for the rest of his life. Imagine what happens if he slaughters the whole house of Nabal over the fact that he won't give him food and he calls him an unjust servant. Usually in a case like this, when we go to act like that, what is the justification for our actions? I have a right to this because the person did what? Wronged me. They have offended me. They have said something untrue about me. Folks, hang around the world for a while. People say a lot of things that aren't true about you. If you watch the news, if you watch the news that's pro one side or the other, they kind of help push their candidates to make them look good, right? And they attack the other side. I watched the debate last night. Apparently they're all cheaters and liars. It was a funny joke, Delight. You can laugh. And we will just move on from there. For surely as the Lord God lives, who has restrained me from hurting you, unless you had hurried and come to me, truly by morning there would not have been left to Nabal so much as one male. Then David received from her hand what she had brought to him, and he said to her, Go in peace, you and your house. See, I have obeyed your voice and have granted your petition. Verse 30, I don't have a glass, 36. Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he was holding a great feast, like a what? Like a feast of a king. Does he know how close he's come to dying? Has no idea, but he is partying hardy. Right? He has almost been wiped from the earth, but his concern has been more about what? His own pleasure. This is what got him into trouble. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunk. So she told him nothing until morning light. And in the morning, when the wine had gone out of Nabal, his wife told him these things, and his heart died within him, and he became like stone. Have you ever seen someone who really has found out just how close to death they came and watched the blood run out of their face? Do you almost died last night? And usually if you've hung out with folks that like to drink a lot and they go to a bar and you kind of step in and keep them from getting beat to death by like the entire bar, and you go back and, dude, seriously, you can't drink anymore because last night you almost got shot, beat, and then arrested. And then watch their response. Not that I've ever hung out in bars, but you just see soldiers. If you've been around soldiers. His heart dies. Comes like stone. His heart literally doesn't die, but he doesn't realize how close he came. He now realizes how close he came. He now realizes what Abigail has done for him, and he becomes a stone. But watch what happens. Watch what happens. David doesn't have to kill this guy. Guess who kills him? The Lord does. David heard, and 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal and he died. Who kills Nabal? The Bible says God killed him because he was a foolish man. He insulted the king. He's also, as Abigail has asked, that the Lord do to anyone who acts as Saul does against David. The Lord kills him. Don't try to take this verse and go, this guy insulted me. In 10 days, the Lord will smite you dead. It's not a direct correlation, folks. It really isn't. It's not this equation like, I'm just biding the time. Day number 9. Day number 8, and I can't wait. Day number 7, and you'll be not in heaven. Day number 6, pick up stick. No, it's not how it works. It's not how it works. But have you ever watched as folks have done things against godly people, and then all of a sudden, they just go away? History is full of guys, stories like this. History is also full of stories of guys like this that then ended up killing all the Christians, and nothing seemed to happen to them. But so you can't really go, yeah, in 10 days, I'm going to pray that God kills this guy, and in 10 days, they are dead. God's not a mafioso. But in this case, that's exactly what happened. And when David heard that he was dead, he said, "Blessed be the Lord who avenged the insult." And you see how it works all back around? The insult I received at the hand of Nabal, and has kept back his servant from wrongdoing. The Lord returned evil of Nabal to his own head. And we've learned a lot of lessons if we would let the Lord exact the judgment instead of us assigning the penalty and then exacting the judgment, right? David had assigned a penalty, and it was death. He took 400 men with him to ensure that death would come. He was going to do that until someone interceded and said, hey, what you're about ready to do is not called justifiable homicide. It's actually called premeditated murder because you brought 400 guys with you. Right? There's a little bit of premeditation. I'm sure there was a battle plan. Okay, 100 of us are going this way, 100 of you going that way, and anything that gets in your way gets killed. Okay? Okay, sounds like a plan. Great. Break. Imagine what would happen if when slights occur, people sat back, calmed down, and if it's truly a great insult, let the Lord exact the punishment. Imagine what would happen. Imagine what would happen within the body of Christ. I mean, there are people that don't come to churches anymore because, well, I got in a fight with somebody there and they just offended me. So you decided to separate yourself from the body of Christ because you're 6. My kids do that. I was in there, I was working on my computer, and I heard, "You're mean! Y'all come here. Sit down on the floor. Tell me what happened." I expect that from that age group. It doesn't make me happy, but I expect that from that age group. Yesterday at Upwards, we had a bunch of grown adults behaving like my kids. Why? Well, they felt insulted, so they felt slighted, so they took or tried to take matters into their own hand. Why? Because, well, I've got to do that. Look at what happens here. David goes to do it. David is stopped from doing it, and notice what David recognizes about allowing God to fight his battle for him. He can take the throne and not have to worry about having blood on his hands right away. Innocent blood upon his hands. Then David sent and spoke to Abigail to take her as his wife. And then his servants of David came to Abigail at Carmel. And they said to her, "David has sent us to take you to him to be his wife." She arose and bowed with her face to the ground and said, "Behold, your maidservant is a servant to Behold, your maidservant is a servant to wash the feet of the servant of my Lord. And Abigail hurried and rose and mounted a donkey, and her 5 young women attended her, and she followed the messenger of David and became his wife. And so David took Enema of Jezreel, and both of them became his wives. And Saul had given him Micah, his daughter, David's wife, to, was it Pelita? And the son of Lesh, who is known as Gallim. So David has how many wives? He has way too many. He has 2 right now. He had 3. Saul took the first one he gave and gave it to another guy. Kind of has that weird opening. Kind of Samuel dies, and then we go and kill people. David gets married, and then we take one of his wives and give it to somebody else. The writer of this book really doesn't have a good transitioning thing, but hey, he's the writer of the book and not me. Questions? Yes, no? Okay. Well, let's circle up for our prayer time, and then we will dismiss. And hopefully there's enough time for you to catch the halftime show. I don't know who's doing the halftime show this year. I kind of got tired of it after I saw the Rolling Stones, and then I realized they needed to take a break.